What did that one teacher do to you that you'll never forget? Senior year, I was placed in a freshman typing class. Everyone else was chatty and goofed off. But I wanted to learn to type. So I really put in a lot of effort. I only had 2 classes in the morning. And the rest of the day I was a waitress. As I was pretty much on my own in my senior year. I got called into work on the day of our class final. So I went to work and missed the final. When I showed up to class the next day, I apologized to the teacher for missing the final. He asked me, "Do you want to know the grade you got?" When I replied yes, he said, "I gave you an A because if you had been here, that's what you would have gotten." I never forgot that. Thank you, MR. Wyatt. Edit. Thank you for asking a question that gave me the opportunity to share a great experience. I was really shocked when I checked Reddit after work. I did not expect much. I was just sharing a fond memory. But it's really fun when something blows up. You made his old lady's day. Thank you. Edit 2. I'm beyond thrilled at the awards. Y'all rock. Had a high school art teacher who would let me stay in his classroom during lunches. Always gave me half his sandwich and other extra food because he knew I didn't eat much otherwise. Edit. He would also keep a drawer in the classroom stocked with snacks so that I could swing by and grab something between classes if I needed. No. He never did anything questionable. And no. I never fell asleep after eating the sandwiches. He was just a kind person. Close bracket. Had 10 minutes to spare before lunch bell and he told us all to go jerk off or whatever it is you do. I don't know what he wanted to say and he apologized to us. But it was funny as hell. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Kind strangers. Sometimes you forget to use your teacher persona. I once had a student tell me that she would be working on Christmas Day at McDonald's. She was excited to get the holiday pay rate. I forgot myself for a second and told her, "Make that money. Girl. Don't let it make you." Double quote. In case you're wondering. That's essentially the tag for the movie The Players Club. A rated R film from the 90s that every black child, including myself, has seen. But had no business watching. 3rd grade Mrs. Jones. My dad had just deserted us and we were suddenly destitute. She bought my school pictures for us and paid my lunch bill all year. She never said a word about it. Only found out later. Bless her. Called my mum while she was at work to tell her I'd written one of the best things he'd ever seen as a teacher. I wrote a term paper in psychology class and got an A. The following year my GF had the same class and the teacher passed around a copy of my term paper as an example of what he expected. A rubric. That was a great feeling. I can't remember what I did, but in 1st grade my teacher got mad at me and said, "You wanna act like a baby? Fine, come over here." She made me sit in a corner on the floor and gave me 2 little toys to play with. This teacher was extremely strict, hated by my class. But loved me because I was one of the few who respected her and did well in her class. When school ended, she gave me a crystal bear. Nothing too fancy or expensive. But I felt as if I was glowing leaving that classroom with bear in my hand. I still have it and will treasure it forever. The professor I had for my Calculus 100 class in university was awesome. He was a good teacher and funny and engaging. If it was a 1st year class with over 100 people in it, I was just a face in a big crowd. I was on campus after hours a couple years after I graduated. They run programs for kids in the evenings and was dropping off my oldest, and I saw him. He stopped, looked at me hard, and said, "First name, last name." Not a bad student. Not great. But definitely not bad. And kept walking. This was a good 6 years after I graduated. Absolutely amazed he would have remembered me at all after teaching how many hundreds of students in between. That is just crazy. I called somebody stupid once when they got a question wrong and the teacher instantly made me stand up and spell stupid backwards. Got it wrong with the pressure and learned a lesson that day. In my senior year, my English teacher asked me if I was manic depressive after turning in a personal essay. only for me to get diagnosed with bipolar disorder a week later. She took every phone call no matter the time of night while I was in rehab. If it wasn't for her being there in my lowest time, I probably would not be here today. I was anorexic when I was in school. She took me aside after class and told me that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing to myself, I was going to die. That my body was going to start shutting down. My organs would fail. That it would not be beautiful and I was going to die an awful and painful death. I still catch myself slipping back into that mindset 10 years later sometimes. But I will never forget that. She saved my life. Told me I was smart and could succeed. I had spent the past couple years at a private school, trying so hard to prove myself. Despite doing well academically, I didn't fit their cookie cutter mold. So I was looked down on by other students and administration. When I told the guidance counselor that I wanted to be pre-med and go to medical school after college, she pretty much told to lower my expectations because I wouldn't succeed. At the end of my college math class my senior year of high school, I ended up in my professor's office to look at what I had missed on my final. He told me that I had done well, and that I could my PhD in math if I wanted. That was not what I wanted to do. But when I told him I wanted to be pre-med, he looked at me and said, "You're going to well in that. I know you will succeed." 6 years later and I'm halfway through my second year of medical school, and his words still ring in my mind. I broke up with my boyfriend the night before my final, and as I was walking to class to take it, my teacher, seeing me, told me that I could take it the following day with his afternoon class without me even saying a word. He was a really great teacher. He knew my home life wasn't the best. He saw a bright kid but someone who struggled with just, following orders. He rode home as I was failing and spoke more kindly about me than most had ever done. It was very nice. Had the police come to the school because he had reason to believe I was smoking cigarettes and using drugs in 7th grade? No. Both of my parents smoked in the house. I didn't even know I smelled like cigarettes until the police told me why they were searching my backpack, desk and locker. My re-teacher tried to keep me behind for no reason. I'm a complete goody two shoes and he gave me my first ever detention for asking my friend about what textbook page we were reading after coming to class late following an appointment. The guy tried to make me pick bits of paper and rubber bands off the floor as he watched me do it. I walked out with zero consequences. It was in my high school. My chemistry teacher. I was a bright student, especially in chemistry. When my grades went down, my parents only bashed me, whereas my sir understood it was due to my mental health issues and literally talked to me and calmed me down. It felt so good. I felt like somebody legit cared and understood me then. My family only cared about my grades, obviously. Edit. Okay, so English is not my first language. Really sorry for any mistakes I made. And as pointed out by a fellow redditor, I'm an Indian, so we address all teachers as sir or madam. Definitely did not think that through while typing it, lol. Also thanks for the silver kind stranger. Close bracket. There was a pretty old economy teacher who always talked about his fishing trips, who gave me an extra point for drawing a dead Kennedy's logo on my test. Then there was the history teacher who turned out to be a pedophile, who I had a whole conversation with about fur coats. And the art teacher who was literally always pregnant, and still is according to my friends who still go to that school. I have always loved learning and loved going to school. I was a good kid and never really got into trouble. One year my parents got called in for a parent-teacher conference. One by one, each of my teachers told my parents that I acted out during class, was a distraction, etc. This came as a surprise to my parents as I had never gotten in trouble, and my grades were always good. Finally, the conversation got to my history teacher and my science teacher. They were speechless. My history teacher told my parents that he wished he had a classroom full of students with a passion for learning like me, and that if the other teachers put in as much effort into teaching as I did into learning, then there would not be an issue. My science teacher agreed and apologized for wasting my parents' time. The rest of the school year was interesting. I could tell there was tension between certain groups of my teachers. My history teacher would later become the principal of that school. And I could not think of anyone more deserving of that role. I was bullied a lot. So I wasn't the type of girl to smile a lot. He told me I should smile more. Every time I would walk into school he'd just say my name and smile. Double quote. I know this sounds stupid. But the way he said it. It wasn't out of compassion or being helpful. It had this mean undertone to it. I still have a case of resting BTCH face. Every time a person tells me to smile I just feel this pit in my stomach. 4th grade. M's hammock. I had to go to the bathroom after lunch and this BTCH was playing those can you games and wouldn't acknowledge me raising my hand. Went to her desk, told her I had to use the bathroom and she said I have to raise my hand. So I shit my pants right there next to her. Told me to stop dating my boyfriend when we were 13 because it's not like you're gonna marry him. We stayed together and got married. I failed a math test and felt super bad, so I went to him to ask if I could rewrite it or somehow improve my grade. He laughed loudly in my face in front of another teacher and just said no. I walk away holding back tears. He also shot down my answers in class a couple times and it taught me not to speak up or ask for help. I still hate him. When I was in 7th grade there was a teacher at my school that was essentially a love child of Santa and an elf. Dude was 5 feet 2 inches. Over 300 pounds. And had a beard that would put Jim Lee to shame. My first ever conversation with this man ended with him saying, "Now you go get yourself something to eat." Big man. He caught me so off guard. I didn't realize what he had said until after I walked away. Have a seemingly intense hatred of me and kick me out of his class permanently. This was high school in 2003. I literally had to go to the guidance counselor and ask for a new teacher because I had been kicked out. I think his hatred was rooted in jealousy. He was openly gay and always talking about how hard growing up life was in general was as a gay man. Meanwhile I was a perfectly well-adjusted openly gay kid enjoying life and having a great time. It was a pretty small town. But no one ever gave me any issues and I had plenty of friends. Even a boyfriend I took to prom. I think he just absolutely hated that. My home ec teacher in 7th grade refused to call me by my middle name, which I've gone by my whole life, using my first name instead. I even told her I preferred the middle name, very bold for me, and she said something like, "No, I'm going to call you first name," like it was up to her. Bitch. Not me. My brother. He had one of those haircuts that was popular in the mid-90s where you have long fringe, maybe 5 inches. But skinhead the rest. He was a skateboarder. Anyway. The woodshop teacher decided that the haircut was a health and safety hazard and swiftly cut his hair in front of the whole class, meanwhile berating him kids today etc. etc. My brother was 12 and came home from school crying. My father was less than pleased. And apparently went up to school and made a right kerfuffle, as he should. My mother was very embarrassed by it all. I'll never forget. In high school one of my teachers had this duck bill whistle, literally shaped like a duck's bill, and it made a quacking noise. She used it to get the class attention. One time I guess we were being extra rowdy and she blew the ever-loving shit out of it and the class went stone dead quiet. She got this shocked look on her face. And then took her hairpin out and dropped it and the whole class heard it hit the ground and she got this big grin on her face and we all just busted out laughing. Be outwardly homophobic in our grade 10 religion class. And get confronted by one female student in the class that straight couples do an L2. You know? Double quote. The look of confusion on his face is still etched in my brain. I love it so much. In choir class my teacher was trying to correct the pitch of what we were singing. But instead of saying pitch he said bitch. Which made the entire classroom erupt with laughter. Accidentally left paperwork on my desk that showed government grade projections based on family income, which meant I should have failed the class, knowing full well it would trigger me to make sure I got the best grade in the entire school year. Every other teacher told me how smart I was and how well I could do if I applied myself. This sob knew that was not a way to make me work, haha. Punched me in the back of the head in 2nd grade for messing up a math problem. Must have messed up pretty bad, lol. In my school there was this one teacher everyone loved. There was one day he just seemed off and the whole class could feel it. Except for 2 stupid guys who just kept talking. He had asked them multiple times to shut up. And when they started talking once again, he just walked up with his 300-page history book and smacked one of them full in the face with it. Never has a class of 15-year-olds been so quiet as after that moment. When I was in 3rd grade, the teacher of my gifted program class, extra class we were pulled from mainstream to do a few hours a week, started berating me over raising my hand too quickly to answer questions, saying I needed to think longer and give others the chance to answer. She went on and on about how I had an attitude. I got upset and she made me stand in front of the class when I started to cry. I know you're crying and I don't care. It was my birthday. It was a class of about 8 students. One guy told me in high school that day was one of his clearest memories from elementary school. 5th grade. Teacher was shaking with anger because I put my math problems horizontally instead of vertically. Or something really stupid like that. She snapped at me for not being able to follow simple directions and humiliated me. When she went to look at the paper of the boy next to me, he said, "I did it the same way." She smiled fondly and said, "Oh, Robert," as if she was amused. Bitch. I have a negative and a positive. Negative is a drunk teacher who made 2 lower income students and I stand up in front of the class because we weren't donating to his stupid expensive chocolate fundraiser. One of them was 8 pieces for $10. This year he was trying to get us to sell crappy pizza. I'm leaving the program next year. Just need my athletic credits. Positive is a teacher who helped me get through a stress breakdown at my karate place. Thank you, senpai. Edit. I'm not a lower income person. I wasn't selling the chocolate because I knew nobody I knew was going to buy it. One of my classmates who got called up wanted to sell stuff, but wasn't allowed. My 6th grade teacher made us act out some Greek gods helpers since we were do mythology. A girl in my class decided to act out as Hermes. After she was done acting out as the character, the teacher looked her dead in the eye and said, "That was gay. Why didn't you act out as a Greek goddess?" The girl left the class crying. I faked my way through 4th and 5th grade math. I never understood how to do long division, but managed to hide that from the teachers and answer test questions by reverse multiplication. Basically get a number and multiply it out and see how close I would get. And keep doing until I got the answer. My 6th grade math teacher figured out that I was faking. And had no idea how to actually divide anything. She had me come in one afternoon to help with cleaning the erasers. All the kids fought for this privilege. So I was thrilled. Sat me down and tutored me until I grasped the concept. Bless you. MRS. Gillespie. During the time we had online lessons, my history teacher I went to Belgium with together with a group of other World War I enthusiasts about a year ago, helped me massively during quarantine the past few months. I talked to him in a separate Google Meet about all the things that were going on with me and my family. He said after that talk, "Hang in there buddy, I saw that he cared for me and wanted to look out for me. Now that we have classes again at school, he asked me if I want to grab a coffee with him someday and walk in the park with him together with his 2 years OKD daughter. Probably soon. Furthermore, every time we have history class, he looks to me whenever he explains about anything. And at the end of every lesson he says, 'Take care, buddy.' Double quote. BTW. I have a furious passion for history that he is aware of and I always can laugh and chill with him in class and have good convos. We were reading Macbeth out loud in class because apparently 17-year-olds can't read on their own. She could tell reading in front of the class gave me horrific trembly anxiety, and that CNT still gave me like 4 characters every class. The there'd be like 2 people sleeping behind me and she never bothered them. Ems. Chandler, if you're reading this, I truly hope you have diabetes because you ruined school for me. I had just gotten out of an emotionally abusive relationship around 16 and was worried about my ex hurting herself. Abuse really fucks up your mind. So I confided in my English teacher. He listened to what I had to say and express. Then secretly got in touch with my parents, school administration, and her school's administration to make sure we were both okay. My parents told me about this about a year after graduation. I was really taken back by the fact that he did all of that to make sure we were okay. I'm Facebook friends with the teacher and want to buy him a beer once COVID is under control. Had a high school math teacher that if you didn't understand something in the problem and asked a question, his response would be, what color is the blue sky? As in, the thing you're asking about is extremely obvious and you're an idiot for not understanding it. Only would actually answer your question after he sufficiently made you feel like shitty for it. Instantly killed any interest I had in math once I had him as a teacher. In primary school I would get bored during class and wander around the tomb. Teachers would get pissed and would ask what did I just say, and I would quote back to them the last 5 minutes of class. The good teachers recognized I was just bored, not a bad student. My 4th grade teacher had a big presentation at the end of the year where he told us his favorite qualities about each of his students. He was the first to show me the being different isn't bad. It's just different. I think about it every day. 15 years later. 7th grade English teacher pointed out to the class that I stuttered. 9th grade English teacher told the class that the reason I left class every Friday was to go to speech therapy for stuttering. Thanks a lot MRS. N and MRS. M. I'll never forget you. Cunts. Refused to take my test when I turned it in. He said no. I refuse to dock you any more points because you won't double check your answers. Check your work, then turn it in. Double quote. All these years later. He's a superintendent. Still just a genuinely good dude. I once got expelled for smoking weed at school when at the time I never even smoked it. I was 13 and started crying saying that I didn't smoke any weed. Since I was crying, my eyes got red, and then the teacher and principal say, just look how red your eyes are. You're ripped out of your mind. Double quote. It got me kicked off our championship basketball team and everything. I'll never forgive those two for what they did to me and the stress they caused my single mother. Pretty minor. But he gave us a compare and contrast assignment involving short stories and gave us the option, if we wanted, to pick stories from the 9 billion names of God rather than the regular assigned stories. I was on a huge Clark kick at the time. So guess what I picked? He told me to keep the book. My physics teacher in high school hosted an annual trip to Walt Disney World in Orlando for 15-20 kids for over a week. I was one of the better and most interested students in his class. He was an incredible teacher who found examples in physics everywhere. He also used to work for Disney prior to teaching. Since my family was not so well off and I could not afford the trip to Walt Disney World, I declined when he asked me if I was going to join. He probed a bit and he somehow found the funds to have me join without me even inquiring. I don't know if he pulled school money or there was a surplus. But either way, that was one of my best memories from that school. I still keep in touch with him 15 years later. One day in middle school we had to turn in permission slips signed by our parent guardian. I was raised by my aunt and uncle from the age of 2. When my aunt would sign forms she always circled guardian. That day when I passed in my permission slip, my teacher called me up and loud enough for the class to hear ask 12-year-old me if I was a foster child. Now, I knew my mother was dead and my father abandoned me. I knew my aunt and uncle weren't my parents. But, for whatever reason it didn't really register to me at that age that I was a foster child. So, I said no. When I got home I brought it up and that was the day I learned I was a foster child. It's not really a huge deal, but I've never forgotten how she asked me in front of the entire class. Guy sitting beside me had his head resting on his stacked fists on the desk. Wide awake and paying attention. Teacher was walking up and down aisles, came up behind him and smacked him across the back of the head with the spine of a rather large business studies book while screeching, "Pay attention." I'll never forget the hollow thud sound. Poor fucker was dazed for hours after.